Hey friends, welcome. My name is Kenny Jahng. This is the Church Online Podcast. We are marching ahead, talking to different leaders in the industry, literally trying to figure out what is this Church Online thing all about. We've had the last 2 years kind of like, I feel like it's like a turbo boost, or someone said to me the other day, it's like they went to GNC, bought everything on the shelf, ate it all, and now we're here. And the thing is, what now? So I've asked a good friend of mine, Stephanie Leathe, to join us on the show here. Welcome, Stephanie. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me, Kenny. And I agree. I like drinking from a fire hydrant.
It is absolutely something like that. Today, we're going to talk about how to design an online experience that everyone wants, basically, and that's increased engagement. That feels like the buzzword bingo game. Everyone seems to be talking about it. The question is, as a practitioner, and this is the one, I was not going to go here, Stephanie, but I feel like this thing might start as a rant episode. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this rant. The rant is, as a former Church Online pastor, back in the day, Church Online pastors was at the bottom rung. We were at the bottom of the food chain, Stephanie. This is how it used to be. It used to be like you have the senior pastor, associate pastor, all the way staff, etc. And then there's the youth minister, right? Youth pastor. Youth pastors, what do? If they have a heartbeat, they're under 25, and they eat pizza, of course they'll get paid in pizza, right? Let's just hire them. And then there's below that is the Church Online pastor, right? It's like, today, right, after the pandemic, etc., we've been catapulted up. Everyone who's in the digital ministry space, I say this is revenge of the nerds. Have you been feeling that, Stephanie?
Absolutely. I just talked with the church yesterday, and the most powerful person on the call is the church production guy and the online pastor, because the fate of their online live streams, of everything that now revolves on a Sunday morning, is in their hands. So absolutely. A lot of power.
So here's my rant part, though, is you now have everyone coming out of the woods. It's like this whole cottage industry that has happened, that there are leaders out there prescribing and making all these claims and trying to teach about digital ministry, online engagement, who, quite frankly, have never gone to a church online service. They might have gone to their live stream. And I've had this epic discussion battles with some other former friends in the space where it's like, you're not the church of Netflix. It does not mean just on demand means it's church online. That's not what church online means. But right, the book that we go by, our instruction manual says where two are gathered, not one on a play button. And so online experiences means there needs to be some community, some interaction. How do you do that? So today we're going to talk about how to design an online experience with increased engagement. And this is like why I want you here, because you are a real practitioner and also a technologist. And you really are someone that has been, I think, of all the people out there in this universe right now, I don't know that many people that have like full time, you wake up, you sleep, think about how in the world do we get more people engaged in this virtually mediated channel of online video, online meetings, etc. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy over there at Altar. Why don't you just first set the stage, tell a little people, give us the elevator pitch of, you know, who you are, what you're doing over at the venture that you're with right now.
Absolutely. Well, those are kind words. So yeah, I'm Stephanie Leathe. I am CEO and founder of Altar Live. Altar is an online video conference and live stream platform designed to create more engagement in your online church services. So we are very much born out of the pandemic, answering that exact question that Kenny just talked about. Is we've all gone online, but if your church is specifically leaning into live services, and meaning different than on-demand content, podcasts, videos, flooding the algorithms of social media, which has its place and is good. But if you're trying to create a live, energetic, engaged experience around a specific event, whether that's your Sunday service, a midweek event, you name it, Altar is a tool to do that. And we've really tried to master the science of engagement.
Nice. Now, when I asked you on today, I gave you a challenge and you rose to the challenge. But let me just set it up for the people here listening, because I think this is like, oh, the pressure's on Stephanie here. I want everyone to keep her accountable here. But basically, we know that, right? people who watch your church sermon online 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, they only remember like 20% of what they saw, right? And then like, if you happen to just use, I don't know, images or videos in the sermons, etc., I think it goes up, right? Do you know what the retention rate is if you start to use multimedia?
Yeah, around 30 to 40% if you're keeping it interesting. It's more than just a camera pointed at a person, but you've really thought a little bit more about the production.
Yeah. Right. So there are people now, it's not just oh, we'll put a camera in the back of the room and just record what's going in the room. There's some thought into, oh, we actually have an audience online. We're going to talk to the audience, not just to the people. And so you start to increase that retention rate, this is great from a preacher's point of view, from discipleship point of view. But what's interesting to me that I've heard recently, you talk about in your work, is that you're saying that there's one thing that will not only increase the retention of the sermon to as high as, I don't know, like, I think you said something like 80 or 90%, but also the likely that the people are going to put what they learned or heard into practice, right? And so, is that the claim? I want to set this baseline before we go in.
You're right, and you can hold me to that. This is a stat that I care deeply about. And
so, is this conjecture? Is this like academic research? Now, you are located in Boston, where there's like 100 colleges within you. Is this a professor's research paper that you are working on, or is this based on reality here?
It's a great question. So my background actually before Alter has been in education.
Yeah.
So educational learning theories is something I've spent a lot of time reading, studying, and putting into practice. And now I work in the tech world. I've built a mobile and web app product, Alter Live, and still do product management. So, if you combine those things together and then you mix in churches, you have a very interesting perspective. So absolutely. I mean, if we think about a church service, any opportunity where you are providing content to people, and that content could be a sermon, it could be a Bible study, it could be a panel conversation with the pastoral staff, you are trying to teach people something. You're trying to reach a learning outcome. Learning outcomes, as you guys know, in educational environments, nobody wants to go to a classroom where you get talked at all day long. In classrooms, the way we get to that 80 to 90% retention rate, memory retention, and the actual ability to take information and make, to transform it into personal ownership and doing, is the ability to actually respond and talk to what you've just heard. So if we now translate that same learning that we've seen, and we see that work in online events as well, when an online event, especially an online church service, actually provides people the opportunity to talk back, whether that be in the chat, whether that be afterwards in a small group discussion, whether that be in Alter Live, we have things like video conference rows and tables in a lobby where you can really seamlessly bring those spaces on screen for people to actually jump in and have live conversation. You see your engagement numbers increase dramatically. This is really easy, for any of you out there who are Reddit users, Facebook group users, this is the magic of groups. This is a space where your voice is heard. People love to hear their own voice from a selfish perspective, but also because that's how, as humans, we learn. So if we apply that to the way we actually do sermons, and especially sermons online, that's the number one way that we see engagement increase.
So, and what you're saying also, I've heard you say, is that the ability to participate in the discussion right after the service is one of the key factors that increases that retention rate, increases the actual implementation rate, right? Like,
absolutely.
So you're saying that we need to actually carve out. So this is really fascinating, because like when I first started in this online space for churches, Life Church, right? Life Church was the thing. And Brandon Donaldson is one of the OG church online pastors there. And one of the reasons I was drawn into Life Church and consistently went there was because after the service, they went behind scenes, and it was him and one other pastor on a tabletop, and they were taking live questions. And I knew every single week I can actually chat at Brandon and have a conversation with the pastor. And I would, it's, to me back then, what I used to say was, oh, it's almost like a supercharged radio program. I don't know about you. You're one of the young ones. I'm old, about to die. But back in the days of the dinosaurs, we had radio programs, and that you would actually have call-ins, and you would request songs, and you would talk to the DJs. And if you're lucky, you'd be able to not get the busy signal, call and talk. And then sometimes they would record it and air it on the radio. So you'd have to be waiting. Right? So if you got recorded, you would wait all night for your clip to potentially get played. And in that environment, it was, wow, this was live and actually could happen every single week consistently.
Absolutely.
Are you saying that type of environment, which was, I don't know, now 8-9 years ago, is still just as effective? That's what you're saying, just something as simple as that.
Absolutely, Kenny. Humans have not actually changed, shockingly, in the last 9 years since that was that motivated people. People want to feel seen and known. That is a fundamental and core value. And churches are amazingly good at that in person.
So,
there is a gap.
Wait. So I just want to qualify, though. Back then, it was, they were on video and I was chatting in the chat box, right? Because of the two-way video. Your platform, Alter, allows me as the participant to actually come on video and actually have the pastor or the staff that's at the church doing the church service could potentially see me. Is that video required for that participation and implementation to go up? Like, it doesn't need to be a video conversation like this, or is it other factors too? Like, can you go back to the chat to the text chat? Like, is video the magic recipe?
Yeah, absolutely. Video is a big part of it. One of the most important things online is choosing your level of engagement. Obviously, that ability to stay anonymous, to check someone out. Way more people check out a church online for the first time now than they do in person. So offering that safe space is still important. But what's even more important is then making it really easy to actually take that next step and participate in some function. So we take it one step farther. Absolutely, you can use the chat, but like you just said, Kenny, you can actually participate over a video conference as well. The ability to talk live with someone with just audio, with video and audio, or just over chat.
And then, does it need to be the pastor, the person who gave the sermon?
Good question. Not necessarily. We have a lot of people that, a lot of churches that will bring up maybe a specific online engagement person. Either it's a volunteer that week, or it's somebody who has the personality and the screen presence. Not every pastor has that same translatable skill to the online environment. I know. I'm sorry, pastor. We were sorry to break that to you. But it's a great way to, think about somebody who's really passionate about that community engagement and drawing that interaction out of the online audience as well.
Now, you say there's actually 4 different things that actually can increase engagement conceptually. And we're going to actually invite you to do a workshop with us at Church Tech today. I think in September, right? September 14th. Put it on your calendars, everybody. September 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to run an actual live workshop, a training event with Stephanie to go through 4 overarching categories of strategies that you can actually implement into your online events. And are you going to teach us, Stephanie, things that are only applied to your Sunday services or other things that we could do throughout the week?
Great question. What we're going to cover together in that workshop is applied to online events in general. What makes an engaging service, Sunday service, midweek event? It could also be applied to meetings and small groups as well. You can extrapolate big to small.
Okay. Okay. And then back to this conversation thing. So I understand that most churches do not have an opportunity to talk after the service. They actually end the service. And one of the learnings that we had at Liquid Church when I was church online pastor is that, and this was an epic battle with Dave Adamson, who was the worship pastor also, of how many songs do you put into online worship? And so, you know, the online church in real life, you would have 4 or 5. Sometimes it just feels like, as a Presbyterian, you feel like it's going to go on forever. Like, oh my gosh, how many songs do we have to sing? In church online, we had a little bit more control. And then we realized that the engagement would actually, people fell off. If you had 4 or 5 songs in a row, people would log in and leave. So we reduced the number of songs at the front, and then we started putting songs in the middle and then mostly at the end. And what we realized is that people started to chat with each other at the end, and then people got pissed. They were upset because there was one song, and then we literally cut the service and then put the spinning logo after because the service is done. And people were like, I just started talking with Stephanie, blah, 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 and then you just cut us off without one. And so we added 2 songs and 3 songs. And so we ended up extending the service over 20 minutes after the end of the formal service, and people still consistently were chatting afterwards. So it's really interesting, like all that practical. We didn't know what we were doing. We're just experimenting.
Right.
But it's syncing up with the stuff that you're saying works in practice, in theory.
Absolutely. It sounds like what you guys did, either intentionally or accidentally, is you actually structured a service in where people entered, they understood what you were about to do together. They experienced something that prompted them to want to make a connection with someone else. It sounds like primarily over the chat. And that connection, you know, trust, connection, similarities, something happened fast enough that they even wanted to stay 20 minutes after the service still chatting.
It was wild to us. Like, it was like, oh my gosh. But then I also had an excuse to say, hey to Dave, I clobbered you and I was right. I'm always right with Dave Adamson.
Was right.
I'm always right. When it's with Dave Adamson, Kenny's always right. Let's just put someone tweet that. But then I was able to, like, at least offer a peace offering that says, okay, you could put worship music on the back end of the service and people are actually utilizing it. People are praying together, people are chatting together, etc. Now, there's going to be a lot of people here that are just going to chime in and say, my people don't talk. They don't chat. We've tried everything for the last 2 years and the chat's empty. What are they doing wrong?
Well, the first question I usually ask churches is, what about your online live service is different than, or offers people a different experience than them listening to it as a podcast? We often put up our live stream videos and expect engagement to just happen. But most people, if you haven't actually changed anything about the structure, and I'm not just talking about adding a few chat hosts or maybe, you know, shortening it here or there a little bit, but you've actually, I'm getting 2 thumbs up from Kenny, but you've actually thought about, you know, what are we doing together that cannot be achieved by everyone just listening to a podcast on their own?
Absolutely. Right.
If you start with that as the building block, then we start to work backwards from that. And that's where we start to unpack, okay, what is it that we are trying, you know, that's where the stickiness comes in. Because if you've really nailed that part of it, people want to come back each week specifically to a live event to participate because there was a reason for them to participate.
Are you recording a podcast or are you conducting a worship service is what the question I usually say to these pastors, because it's great. In person, those dynamics is great because you know what? You have a captive audience. They entered the room, you lock the door at the back, and you force them to stay there. I mean, if they don't like it, they could snooze, and that's what ends up happening, right? They just sleep through the sermon, and then you let them out the door at the end. You can't do that online, and so that is, even though it's the same thing, it's not the same online, and at the end of the day, that's my question. Are you recording a podcast or actually conducting a worship service online? And I think that's the thing. Now, can you give maybe one practical tip in terms of that? Because again, people are lost. They literally are dying for that engagement. The intention is there, motivation is there, and they're trying different things, right? We have good people in our community, but again, I think this thing is elusive. What's one other thing that they could do to actually get that conversation going, either during or after the service?
I think you've probably heard this term a lot, but the ability to connect with a felt need at the very top of the service. Something that will guide people through and give people an opportunity that they want to share about, that they want to hear from other people about, and they want to actually be in conversation with others about. Again, people want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about their own life, how this applies to them, and they want to learn from other people if it's a topic that they feel passionately about.
So can you?
So how
can you just give one practical example using your platform, right? Because you've built your platform from ground up. That's engagement centered. I think this is the one thing. Like, people use all these other platforms, and they weren't built with engagement in mind. They were built with one-way broadcast in mind. I think that's the big difference. So can you give us a best case scenario or just one example of that in the Alter universe, like in your platform? How would you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say at the basic level, some of the things that you do in Alter is you set up your environment so that when people walk in, there's immediately ways that they can have their voice heard. The first is through things like chat. We're all really familiar with that. Announcements, the ability to actually like respond to things. Polls, the ability to see how your response compares to a group of people together that might spark conversation.
So you have live response on the polls? Like, I can vote and it's not like it just goes into thin air.
No, live response. So you can actually see, what do other people think about this same topic? And then the ability to, what we do is we call matchmaking. This is the ability to actually put people in rows together where you might have something in common, where you can actually make a connection with someone else. Now, that's obviously not everybody wants to opt into that. Again, choosing your level of engagement. How comfortable are you to be able to have that kind of live conversation? If that sounds like something that is really like you're thinking to yourself right now, my people would never do that because, like Kenny said, they're barely chatting in the chat. I 100% bet you that it's not that they don't know how to use chat or they don't want to use chat. It's that they have nothing to talk about right now. What is it that they would, what would they share currently? So what we will do in our workshop is really dig deeper into what's that felt need, where can we scratch an itch that people actually, I'm looking forward to showing up because I want to talk about this. I want to learn about this. I want to hear from other people about this.
Now, one of the features, if people have not actually checked out Alter, is that you actually can sit in rows within the room, and I can watch the stream of the video at the front of the room, right? It's kind of like it's a, how do you, is 2D VR the right way to say this?
I actually just somebody the other day described that to me as 2D VR. You don't have a moving body around the platform, but you can move yourself around.
It's VR without the dizziness, VR without VR without looking like a nerd in the room.
Yes.
But anyway, so you sit in a row, which I find this feature fascinating, that you can actually watch the screen and you have that up there. So you're literally, the preacher's there. But then the immediate people in my row on the sidebar, my video circle pops up, and then I can actually talk with those people as if, just like in real life, like I can actually whisper and talk with you during the sermon. Which is good and bad. Because sometimes in church you're just, you're talking about, shopping lists and other things that you have to do outside of church. But you're saying that that's the type of thing in that matchmaking type of activity you're talking about. It's like, hey, put people in the same row that have different felt needs or affinities or friends or etc.
Absolutely. During the rows, you're spot on, Kenny, that during the service, you can sit in those rows. After the service, you can actually move people into a lobby. So recapturing those 10 minutes that after the service that are so important for so many people that happen in the hallway, we're trying to recapture that online in some creative ways. So yes, you can also keep people around afterwards. And, people's behavior during services is, we've been trained for 2,000 years not to talk during church. So it's, that is actually not where we usually see the most engagement in terms of those rows. It's after the service that you really make those video conference connections. But again, depends on how you've structured your service. We have a church that hosts Sunday night, they call them town halls, where it's their Sunday service chopped up, but then turns into a panel discussion, and they pause it and they'll like put questions on screen, and they have about 60% of online attendees take seats in those types of events because they're intentionally showing up knowing that this is a panel discussion style service.
And when do they hold it? This is not on Sundays.
Sunday evenings. So it's basically their online church service.
Wow.
And they specifically designed it to be very much seeker friendly, new to church friendly. So they run Facebook ads in their local community. They live near a college, and they'll go through different topics. So the most recent one they just did was faith and science. Are they at odds with each other? And they even have some worship segments in. They're playing around with different formats, but their engagement levels are so high on that because people are showing up knowing that their voice is going to be heard, and they have an easy tool to actually have those conversations.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Stephanie, so September 14th, you're going to come back and actually teach us how to do a lot of these things. I think one of the things is countless studies like have shown that people learn from immersive experiences. That's not new, right? But, and I guess this is not the, hopefully this is not an epiphany, but most church online services are far from being immersive, right? Like at least in today's modes, in today's, with a timestamp of, July, August, 2022, most church online services have a far way to go in terms of potential. And so the hope is for everybody is that in this workshop, we're going to help you design an online service that actually increases the number of returning visitors. I say you need a repeat visitor machine, not a first-time guest machine. If you just have this revolving door, that's not good enough. We have to look at the second-time visitors, not the first-time visitors. And then you want to deepen the quality of engagement. And we want to actually, I guess in this workshop, figure out how to show people who is actually attending the church online services, right? And so I think there's 3 objectives that we've actually talked through and challenged you to come to the table with in terms of learning objectives. I think everyone on September 14th is going to figure out like how to understand the difference between broadcast and engagement models, right? There's not just one model of each, and I think you need to think through that. So I think that's setting the table. Number 2 is redesigning elements of your church online service to increase intention, right? So I think, are you going to go through more than one way? Like, is there just one mode of like the optimal, or is there more than one? Is it flexible? How are you?
Good question. We usually go through 4 main buckets, 4 main ingredients to an engaging online church service. And I won't spoil it now, but there are perfect. 4.
And then the thing that I required and I challenge you is like, oh, you got to help our people. It's not one of those sit and soak and everyone disappears. Rah, rah, they go back to work and they don't know how. So you're going to help us with some templates and tools, right? So people can actually, for their own online hosting team, right? So sometimes the preaching pastor, the senior pastor shouldn't be the one who's actually hosting online engagement. But then what do you do? So we need some templates, some tools to equip that online hosting team that are really proven, right? That actually deepen engagement, not just like some fancy scripts. Again, this isn't YouTube. This isn't just like one-way broadcast. How do we actually do this newfangled thing called engagements? So hopefully we're going to go through all of that on September 14th, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited for it.
So if you want to sign up now, we're opening up the pre-registration. You can go to churchtechtoday.com/engagement. And you can find the sign-up form there. It's completely free to actually get into that session. But again, we're literally hoping that you're going to join us and bring your team members too. The more the merrier. I think this is one of those things where we need to incite more discussions across the leadership team and your actual ministry teams to start thinking through these things differently. Church Online today is far from being immersive, and that's because we are stuck in broadcast models, not engagement models. And Stephanie's going to walk us through that because I'm going to call you nerd, Stephanie, but Stephanie is the nerd on this stuff. She's the one I call.
I do. Wake up thinking about this, go to sleep thinking about this.
You are the one I call for this type of stuff, right? It's just
learning series. Oh yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Stephanie, for spending some time with us today. Hopefully this has been helpful for everybody. Again, as I do with every episode, I'm asking for you to help share with me what resonated in today's episode, email me at kenny@churchtechtoday.com. And then if you wanted to email me after you register at churchtechtoday.com/engagement. If you would ask a question going into that workshop surrounding engagement, surrounding increasing engagement with your online services and online experiences, not just your Sunday services, all of your online experiences. How do you increase engagement? What's the question on the top of your mind specific to your ministry? Let's be a little specific, and maybe we'll have a Q&A session that we can rifle through, Stephanie, to actually help people very concretely, contextually for their environment, not just throwing some general platitudes out there, but really equipping these leaders to figure out, okay, we need to change the game a bit and try something different. Now, Stephanie, what if someone wants to learn more about the offerings that you have and Alter, the platform that you have right now, what's the best way that people can follow up after listening and watching this show today?
Great question. So you can go to alterlive.com. Alter is spelled with 2 A's, so ALTAR. Go ahead and check out our feature set there. You can create a free account if you're the kind of person that just likes pushing all the buttons yourself and seeing how it works. Chat with our team. We'd love to show you the behind the scenes as well. You can reach me personally at stephanie@alterlive.com. I'd love to hear more about your church, your specific goals, dreams for your online community, and then helping bridge the gap to get there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. Remember, sign up for the workshop. It's churchtechtoday.com/engagement. We'll see you on September 14th. And in the meantime, remember, be social, stay social.